anything going on in Raiders camp?
Yeah, it's boring as usual.
Yeah.
Another day, another just waking up to the sunrise and this bullshit.
That's it. What's up, everybody? It's Bigz, it's Raiderdamus, and thankfully, with much mercy and grace, the 2024 season is over. A long 18 weeks of trash, garbage, futility, fecklessness. It's over. We're here to talk about the future. The future is now. And some things have happened over the last few days. And we did have a couple of weeks off due to illness and what have you. So when last we spake, the Raiders were on the verge of their longest win streak of the season. 2 games, one against the Jaguars and then one against Falcons, or vice versa, Falcons and Jaguars, whatever. Doesn't matter. They eked out 2 more wins and dropped all the way down to the number 6 spot in the NFL draft in April, and we will talk about that coming up. Their last game of the season, game 18, they were trying to avoid a sweep of the AFC West, or at the hands of the AFC West, and they failed to do that. So let's talk about that game real quick. It's the state of the nation. Raiders lose to the Chargers. Chargers move on to the playoffs, and Raiders went 0-6 against the division. That's not how you retain a job. And none of you came here to hear about this loss on Sunday anyway. We already knew that, but there was breaking news today. And first of all, that Chargers loss solidified the number 6 pick. We'll get into that at some point. But much to the chagrin of at least one person, Antonio Pierce was let go today and will no longer be the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. I have mixed feelings about it. On the one hand, I look at Dan Campbell as the prime example of what you can do if you're a rah-rah guy with a few years of a learning curve to learn how to call games and things like that, especially with some advisors in the room like Marvin Lewis and Norv Turner. You don't need to be an X's and O's genius to be the head coach of a football team. And Dan Campbell is the poster child for that thought. On the other hand, the way that one of the beat writers put it in their tweet earlier today was they don't have time to wait. And I'm like, well, what the hell else are they going to do? So Pierce is out. The only person remaining from the coaching staff at the heads of the coaching staff that we know of is Patrick Graham, but he's on his way out to do interviews. Scott Turner hasn't been advised he will not return with the team yet, but that will likely happen with the hiring of a new head coach. Tom Telesco apparently still has his job, so maybe he can fire his guns at the draft again and hit on some talent. Raiderdamus, your first thoughts on the firing of Antonio Pierce?
My first thought is that it's just sad because there was so much promise that we saw from Antonio Pierce in the last half of the previous season to this one. And then he just came in this season and started off the year with a bad decision by hiring Luke Getsy. Started off the year with a bad decision by starting Gardner Minshew. And then one by one, every good player on the team got hurt or was traded. So really, Pierce had absolutely nothing in the bag and did not make it any better for himself with the hiring of Getsy, the starting of Minshew. Really shot himself in the foot at every turn. There wasn't really anything that Pierce did from a coaching perspective or standpoint that I can look at and say, oh, yeah, this guy should be a head coach in this league. Whereas I can watch any Detroit Lions game and find 10 things that Dan Campbell has done just to justify his spot in the world. So Antonio Pierce was given a turd sandwich and made shit salad out of it. Whereas Dan Campbell was given a pretty bad situation, but was bolstered by the fact that he got Jared Goff on his team. and a lot of bad things can be covered up for on a football team when you have a really good quarterback.
And Aaron Glenn is a key component, and so is Ben Johnson.
If you hire good coordinators, which Pierce did not ever do, then you're probably on your way to success. But so I think Scott Turner did okay. I don't think he did super great. The offense didn't average a boatload more points, or I think any more points at all than they did under Luke Getsy with Scott Turner at the helm. And Patrick Graham, I think, was probably about checked out by the end of the season, and really didn't have much to work with almost his entire functioning starting offense or defensive line gone for injury for the entire year, and cornerbacks and safeties going down one by one. So I just think this year was a shit show all around. I'm not sure how much blame lies at the feet of Antonio Pierce personally, but when something like this season happens, somebody has got to go, because you have to start over.
The only fundamental problem with that I have is that last year was the start over year. This is the first year of the start over.
If they really wanted to start over, they would have not gone with Antonio Pierce, and they would have hired Jim Harbaugh like the Chargers did. The Chargers started over properly.
Right, but a reset, maybe not start over, a reset. It's very, very hard. You look at the best teams in the NFL, and what do they all have in common? Continuity. Now, you take a team like the San Francisco 49ers, and they had a god-awful year, even with continuity. They had tons of injuries across the board. But look at who's playing in the playoffs. Detroit Lions, they've had continuity for the last 3 or 4 years. The Baltimore Ravens, John Harbaugh has been there for a long time.
The Eagles,
same thing. The Buffalo Bills, at least 2 or 3 years. If you just keep turning over the staff year by year, you're never going to be able to build something. And that's what we've been doing. It's been a chronic problem. And
my counterpoint to this is the Bengals. The Bengals had a lot of continuity and shit the bed this year. Missed the playoffs. They lost a few too many games. They weren't better than the Broncos, even though they beat the Broncos head-to-head. They weren't better overall. But the Bengals, in their last 20 years, have had a bajillion head coaches. Finally, they got it right with Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow. I've always been a proponent of not settling for mediocrity for the sake of continuity. If you have a guy that isn't gonna cut the mustard, try again. What do you have to lose at that point? What do you have, another 4-13 season to look forward to if you get it wrong? Who the fuck cares at this point? Get it right or don't get it at all.
Right. The counterpoint to that is that 4-13 season leads to the ability to continue to build the team. And if we have a coach that comes in, say Tom Telesco gets a burr under his saddle and trades up for Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders because we need to have that quarterback,
which he should.
They're not good. We're just going to be in the same position at the end of next year, albeit with another head coach who is bound for failure because the offensive line isn't built. The quarterback is, shaky. We watched the dominoes fall. The Gardner Minshew decision lead to defenses being able to get us off the field, leaving our defense on the field, and injuries happening and our defense being ineffective. We watched all that happen in real time. The way to combat that is to put a regime in place that is going to be given the ability, the oxygen, the ceiling to build something and build upon it year over year. We took a step back this year because of the decision to move on from Bo Hardegree, because, injuries happened and we didn't go with O'Connell. If you keep making waves like that year after year, we're gonna keep being at the bottom. And
well, let me say this. What we're experiencing right now as Raiders fans, just like most things in life, are the fault of the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons took Michael Penix Jr., right out from under our noses when we could have had him. And the Atlanta Falcons right now are reaping the benefits of that because Kirk Cousins sucks, as I knew all along, and every Falcons fan knew all along. Michael Penix now is the future of the Atlanta Falcons, but it was a questionable decision at the time to take him. So if the Raiders had their quarterback of the future in place right now, which they should, then I don't necessarily think Antonio Pierce doesn't have a job tomorrow. I think he probably keeps his job. So there are just 1.5 million decisions that went into this. There's nothing Antonio Pierce could do about the Falcons being idiots. He can only control what he could control, and everything he could control went to shit.
Get Shrek would still rather have Bowers than Penix.
I mean, I would too, but we wouldn't be in the position we are with Penix and not Bowers.
Right. All right, so moving forward, there are some candidates whose names have been bandied about, and Ben Johnson is the one who's on the top of everybody's list just because of what he's been able to do in Detroit. Obviously, if we hire Ben Johnson, who's been the top of my list for the last 3 coaching hires, I would be elated. I don't think that's going to happen. Mike Vrabel is another guy that people are talking about. Don't want any part of that.
He'll probably be the Patriots coach in a week.
Right. Even if not, I still don't want any part of that. Then you got the retreads, Matt Eberflus. You got, just guys all over the place. Are there any? So Rex Ryan is a name that I've heard. People are talking about bringing John Gruden back. Like, stop it. Who are a couple of names that are on your radar that you think would be okay for the Raiders to give a shot to?
Well, see, that's the trouble with firing Antonio Pierce right now, because outside of the guys that you're most likely not going to get, there aren't a lot of good options. In fact, there probably aren't any good options unless you want to bring a guy up from college. And I think, the best guys right now have pretty cushy jobs. Like, I would take Dan Lanning right now. I would take Steve Sarkisian right now as the Raiders. I would, though. I mean, as shitty as Sarkisian was, in his last go around, the dude has been absolute nails at Texas. He's shown to be a pretty competent head coach.
He's a slimy snake, and he doesn't deserve to be near a football field.
Well, that is completely beside the point. Well, I know what kind of human being Steve Sarkisian is, and I would not let him watch my children for an hour. But Texas was in a real nasty spot when Tom Herman was at Texas. And Steve Sarkisian came in and turned it around in about 6 months. And Texas has been an absolute powerhouse since then. It's no shocker that he got Arch Manning to come to Texas, because he's built a really fucking good program. That's the kind of, not necessarily Sarkisian himself, but that's the kind of guy that if the Raiders are going to get somebody, that's the kind of guy I would want them to get.
So my first instinct is I don't want a retread coach. I don't want Pete Carroll. That's another name that has been thrown around. I don't want any of these old guys that they know the NFL. Yeah, but they're not innovative. We watched Gruden come back after 10 years away and not be innovative whatsoever. So my first instinct is to try and find somebody who is kind of like a brilliant mind that's kind of sitting in the college landscape that not a lot of people are talking about. So I'm going to have to do a little bit more research on that. But then there are the coordinators, and that they tend to kind of get some steam. Todd Monken is a name that has been not linked to the Raiders, but talked about as looking for a job. Ejiro Evero from the Carolina Panthers, who last year Hondo Carpenter said if he ever gets into a head coach interview, he's leaving with the job. He's scheduled to talk to somebody soon. And then Liam Cohen from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is another guy that I kind of have my eye on. I want to say that this head coaching decision is going to be less a Mark Davis decision and more of a Tom Brady and Tom Telesco, the two Toms working together to try and figure this shit out. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, if I would pick anybody in the whole world right now, it would be Ben Johnson. I've watched almost every Lions game that's been on, not during a Raider game, for the last 2 years.
Same.
And the Lions offense is about as impressive as it gets. I mean, I grew up watching the late 1980s and early 1990s San Francisco 49ers because that's where I lived, and we got all the games on TV, and my parents were big Niner fans, so that's what I watched. And that was about as unstoppable of an offense as you can find, and about as smothering a defense as you're going to find, which is why they won so much. The Lions have been close to that. And a lot of it not only is due to Dan Campbell, but is due to the efforts of Ben Johnson. The creativity and the play calling, the willingness to go for it on fourth down so much, which is, a Campbell thing, but he doesn't call those plays. Ben Johnson does. That's why they're successful. It's because he's using Ben Johnson's playbook. That's the kind of mentality the Raiders need, is that sort of, go for broke attacking mentality with the talent to fucking back it up. I 100% trust Tom Telesco to build a roster that's at least competent. He did this year. They just all got hurt. So I think he won't in Las Vegas have anything close to the roster he has in Detroit, because Detroit had the luxury of trading Matt Stafford for somebody almost as good as Matt Stafford, plus a bunch of draft picks, which they used to great effect to draft Sam Laporta and Jameson Williams and a bunch of other guys too. We're not going to have that level of talent. We do have an extra third-round pick coming from trading the corpse of Devontae Adams, so that will be nice. But I think with Ben Johnson, or even somebody like Liam Cohen, because the Bucs offenses look fantastic this year with Baker Mayfield at the helm. But with somebody like that, a really good offensive play caller, I think they can go far. The problem I have with taking somebody from college like this great offensive mind is that the Cardinals did this a few years ago with Cliff Kingsbury. He was considered the hot shit offensive mind, languishing down in college, totally unknown by anybody, and they brought him up and he shit the bed. I mean, he was okay for a while, and then people figured him out and he wasn't okay anymore. He's done a fantastic job with the Commanders this year because offensive coordinator is where he belongs. I would not bring up a guy like that to be a head coach. I would bring up a guy like that to be a quarterback's coach or an offensive coordinator, which I think eventually is what the Raiders will have to do. But I'd be very happy with either Johnson or Cohen or even Todd Monken, who's done a fantastic job himself. Any of the guys you mentioned were the guys I was thinking of. It's just, outside of those guys, it's really slim pickings. And I think those guys are going to be at the top of the list for a lot of teams.
Yeah, and so it's basically going to come down to who comports themselves well in the interview process, who has the potential to even approach the table with a competent quarterback, or at least a quarterback that could learn. Looking into Liam Cohen's past, he does come from the Sean McVay coaching tree, which is the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree, which is the same coaching tree that John Gruden came from. It's all the Washington former known as Redskins guys came from. Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan.
So it's the Bill Walsh coaching tree, really.
Right, which is the Al Davis coaching tree.
Which is the Paul Brown which is the Sid Gelman and Paul Brown coaching tree. You can go back to 1920 if you want. I'm ready.
But specifically the staff that had Kyle Shanahan in Washington with Sean McVay and Mike McDaniel. That's what I'm talking about. But yeah, Monken had a pretty mercurial rise from Georgia into the NFL. I absolutely wouldn't mind him being out there. Get Shrek Bra. I would trust Vrabel to build a culture. Ben Johnson and the Bucs OC would be top options. Mike Vrabel was the head coach of the Tennessee Titans when they traded away A.J. Brown. That's all I have to say.
All wide receivers are divas. If the guy wants out, there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do. He's at a happy place right now, but that doesn't go for every wide receiver all the time. I mean, look at freaking T. Higgins. I mean, people and Tyreek Hill this week, wanting out of Miami. These people are insane. We have to understand that as football fans. They're nuts. You don't get to be a wide receiver of that skill level without being batshit crazy. So trading A.J. Brown is the least of the transgressions of Mike Vrabel, in my view.
And Get Shrek agrees with you. He says that was the GM's decision. Sure. but when you're a coach, you fight for it. All right, so the all right, Vrabel hated Treylon Burks. Well, then
Don't we all?
Then I want Vrabel even less. All right, so we have seen Scott Turner come in and try and do what he could with Aiden O'Connell. We saw Luke Getsy try and come in, have a scheme, and see what he could do with Gardner Minshew. We saw, Jimmy Garoppolo, Josh McDaniels trying to completely subvert Derek Carr and make him fail. What are we doing at quarterback? Because thankfully we are out of this. We are in the 6th spot, which means that Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders should have been taken by then. The two teams, one of the benefits of the Patriots winning the game on Sunday before firing Gerard Mayo is that they dropped out of the number 1 spot, and there was a lot of talk, since they don't need a quarterback, they've got Drake May. They would have been good trade partners for the Raiders to trade up. I will make it very, very clear right now. If Shedeur Sanders is a Raider in 2025, I renounce my Raider fandom.
He's just not a good fit for any team that does not already have an established culture in the locker room. Because if you're looking to Shedeur Sanders for leadership, you need to look elsewhere. Because that guy is as flaky as they come and will throw his teammates under the bus at the slightest provocation. I do not like Shedeur Sanders, except as a football player. As a human being, he has a lot to be desired. I like Cam Ward so much better. It's not even funny.
But Shedeur Sanders is not a good quarterback. He's not a good thrower of the ball. He doesn't have a good he holds on to the ball too long. All of the things that Gardner Minshew does, Shedeur Sanders does. And it infuriates me. Over the last couple of days, since the college season effectively ended, non-playoff edition, the tape grinders have gotten out and started digging through tape, trying to prognosticate this draft. And feed after feed was popping up in my timeline showing Shedeur Sanders, and the balls that he was throwing to people they're not good. I do have a quick update. I was planning on going to the Shrine Bowl in Dallas, and I would have been able to see Shedeur and Shiloh. I'm not doing that. I'm going to the Senior Bowl only. Apparently, Player Profiler, with whom I'm going to be part of the media team at the Senior Bowl, needs me there on the Monday of practices to start the Senior Bowl. And the Shrine Bowl was just something that I was trying to do, while I'm in the South, I may as well do that. So instead of getting into Mobile on that Thursday for the Shrine or for the Senior Bowl on Saturday and the Thursday and Friday practices, I have to be there for the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday practices, and then I'm just going to stay through and go to the game, whatever. So it's just going to be that one trip and then the Super Bowl instead of going to the three spots. So that I'm saying that to say I'm going to miss Shedeur Sanders at the Shrine Bowl. But I'm kind of glad he's going to be there, because as long as he falls outside of the Raiders' purview, I don't understand this. All these links to him and Tom Brady. I guess Brady works with them, but that's no reason to draft a guy if he's garbage. Cam Ward will be gone. If the Titans don't take him at number 1,
they almost certainly will. They love Cam Ward.
Then the Browns will take him, and then the other guy.
But the Titans did not only fire their coach, they fired their GM Rand Carthen early this morning, I believe.
Yes.
So there's no real telling what the Titans are going to do at this point. They very well may trade out if the new guy thinks Will Levis is worth a shit, which I don't, but somebody might. Spending a second rounder not too long ago on Will Levis, maybe they have a gambler's fallacy and decide that sunk cost fallacy and decide they don't want to take another quarterback so highly. They should, because, as I said before, you don't endure mediocrity for the sake of continuity, especially at quarterback. But who know? This is such a crapshoot. I think the Patriots are still going to end up with the guy they would have drafted at number 1 anyway, which is Travis Hunter, and they should. So I don't think the win for them meant anything whatsoever as far as the person they're going to get. It just gives them a little bit less in what they might have gotten in trade compensation, which is a big deal for a rebuilding team.
If we want to talk about potentialities, there is a guy who, if he were to make his way to Tennessee, might think that Will Levis is the answer there, and that's Liam Cohen.
It's possible.
Now, we talked pre-show about a couple of the quarterbacks in this potentially in this draft, because I know I mentioned Drew Aller, but apparently he's going to be staying. I kind of like Jackson Dart, and he's not going to be a first rounder. I have no problem taking him as a second round guy. Get somebody with the 6th pick that is going to make an impact on the team next year, and then draft Jackson Dart and see if he can compete for a starting quarterback spot during camp and stuff. Now, I don't want a controversy again, because that's just like media fodder. So the other kind of, it's not really a rumor, it's a speculation that has been bandied about out there in the ether, but that is the possibility of either the Vikings trading JJ McCarthy and trading him to us, or Sam Darnold ending his contract and signing as a free agent with us. I did my first mock draft of the year, and in the second round, I was offered a 2027 first and Sam Darnold for that second round pick, and I smashed that button. Took Will Campbell with the first pick, try and shore up that offensive line. Grabbed Caleb Johnson in the 3rd round. He's a very, very capable running back, and somebody else a little bit later. But I came out of the first 3 rounds of the draft with Caleb Johnson, Will Campbell, and Sam Darnold. I wouldn't hate that.
That's how the Lions rebuilt themselves with picks like that. I mean, they got a really good offensive line because of their drafting ability. They built their wide receiver core because of their drafting ability. I mean, they didn't sign a ton of free agents because, who wants to live in Detroit on purpose? But they have drafted absolutely fantastically. And I have no doubts that Tom Telesco could do similar things. We already saw it. Getting Brock Bowers when he did, as late as he did, was an absolute stroke of genius. Brock Bowers right now is the best tight end in football. I don't think there's any question about that. Unless you are a George Kittle apologist or something, which is reasonable. But I give the Raiders a few more years and few more draft classes like this, and they'll be fine no matter who their head coach is. I just hope it's somebody competent.
Now, I'm not trying to be an alarmist here. I just want everybody to kind of like take Brock Bowers with a little bit of measure. All right. Brock Bowers broke the tight end record of Kyle Pitts. Brock Bowers finished his rookie season with a yards per route run metric of 2.02 yards. Kyle Pitts finished his rookie season with 2.02 yards per route run. I'm not equating the two. Brock Bowers is an absolute 100% different player than Kyle Pitts in terms of his work ethic, his attitude, his abilities on the field, the kinds of things that he does with the ball when it gets in his hands, the kinds of things that he does in pass blocking, the kinds of things that he does in run blocking. He is 150% the player that Kyle Pitts was. I'm just saying, if he comes out of the gate slow next year, don't be surprised. All right. Was there one more thing? So your thoughts on Darnold or McCarthy, because as you know, 1 year ago, I was really, really high on JJ McCarthy and was hoping that he somehow found his way to silver and black. Sure. Would you rather have JJ McCarthy to build upon or bring Sam Darnold until we get a high draft pick in 2026?
Sam Darnold thrives when there's nobody in his face and when the running game is working and when everything is going well. There are very few quarterbacks this season who were better than Sam Darnold when the pocket held up. However, when it didn't, he was running for his life and making stupid errant throws to the other team. And I think with the Raiders in their current state, with guys not being able to get a lot of separation on the offensive line, not holding up as much as you would like, I don't think Sam Darnold would be very good as a Raider. And that's no knock on him. That's just the way that he plays is best suited with a clean pocket. J.J. McCarthy, on the other hand, has a little more mobility, and not that the Michigan offensive line was ever super bad, but he rolled out and made plays all the time, and he made plays under duress constantly because Ohio State was trying to kill him nonstop. So I think for the Raiders, J.J. McCarthy is a better option. But for the Vikings right now, this is a sort of a Drew Brees and Phillip Rivers sort of decision. The Chargers they drafted Phillip Rivers, and then all of a sudden Drew Brees got really, really good as a Charger, and they decided to trade Drew Brees. I guess they just let him go, and he decided to sign with the Saints, and became one of the best passers in NFL history statistically. Yeah, and Phillip Rivers was also pretty darn good too. And became one of the best passers that we've seen in a very long time. I think, however, given the choice, the Chargers, if they knew what we know today, probably would have stuck with Drew Brees and traded Phillip Rivers. So I'm not sure, given that knowledge, what the Vikings are going to do. I think it would be in their best interest to go with J.J. McCarthy, but I'm not sure they're going to do that because the sort of Minnesota way is to, stick with what works, and Darnold is working so far. But I think McCarthy has infinitesimally more upside than Sam Darnold does, and I think that will become apparent next year when the Vikings are almost certainly not as good as they are right now.
So what I'm hearing is that J.J. McCarthy and Sam Darnold are both Hall of Famers.
I don't know if they're both Hall of Famers. I think they're both going to be very good. I don't think if the only way Sam Darnold is getting into the Hall of Fame is to buy a ticket like you did. I mean, I don't know. Listen, I'm not going to say J.J. McCarthy's not going to get in either, but It's unlikely for any player to get into the Hall of Fame. It's a very exclusive club.
Now, there's a question that has been posed over the last few days, and it regards running it back with Aiden O'Connell. Now, there was a lot of talk over the 2023 season and into 2024 about how good CJ Stroud is. Looking at the numbers of Aiden O'Connell's last 16 games and CJ Stroud's last 16 games. So effectively, this is CJ Stroud's 2024 season and Aiden O'Connell's career. CJ Stroud has a few hundred yards more passing yards, 3 more touchdowns, 4 more interceptions than Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell has a better touchdown to interception ratio than CJ Stroud does. Their completion percentage is negligible at about 62%, and their QB rating 85.3 for O'Connell, 86 for CJ Stroud. Now, CJ Stroud is in the universe that applies wins to quarterbacks and thinks that a win-loss record is very important, is what makes a quarterback good. A lot of those same people attribute the turnaround of the Houston Texans from bottom feeder to playoff team to CJ Stroud's play at quarterback. And Aiden O'Connell has not been that much worse than CJ Stroud has, and in fact has thrown fewer interceptions over the last 16 games than CJ Stroud has. Aiden O'Connell, given a full season of starting quarterback in a system with a guy like Ben Johnson or Liam Cohen, who know how to deal with quarterbacks, could blossom into the bridge quarterback that we need going into 2026. And there's another stat that I will throw out at you. I don't take PFF grades except when I can use them, and I'm going to use this one. So quarterbacks when pressured versus with a clean pocket. When pressured, Aiden O'Connell was the 9th highest graded quarterback according to PFF in 2024.
Well, it's
I
not
don't hate
surprising. That's not surprising since the offensive line probably had him pressured quite a bit. So,
Right.
I mean, that's a volume stat right there. That's sort of like Gilbert Arenas' 3-point percentage.
I'm still on board with a 17-game season for Aiden O'Connell.
Well, considering his history of getting hurt, I'm not sure we'll ever get that. But I think a win-loss record for a starting quarterback is just as useful as a win-loss record for a pitcher. We all know that there are lies, damn lies, and statistics, and the statistics you just read in comparison between O'Connell and Stroud are a good example of the damn lies part, because I don't think there's any personnel guy or any executive in the history of the NFL who would take Aiden O'Connell in a full season over C.J. Stroud. The Texans were in position to draft C.J. Stroud in the first place because they were terrible. And then in his rookie year, C.J. Stroud took the Texans to the playoffs. Aiden O'Connell has never taken anybody to the playoffs and most likely never will. I love Aiden O'Connell as a human being. I think he's a good backup quarterback, but I think that's about all he is. I think if you're going to go with him as your starting quarterback next season, something has gone terribly wrong, both in free agency and in the draft. You absolutely have to get your quarterback of the future. That is non-negotiable. Aiden O'Connell is not it. Aiden O'Connell in 5 or 6 years may be to some team what Rich Gannon was to us in the late 90s. Maybe a guy who languished in obscurity, was a journeyman, played in a bunch of places, and finally gets his chance to shine and does. And that may be for somebody, but he's not that right now. He's competent. He's okay. He's actually kind of good. He's just not great. And the Raiders are not in a position right now to not have great as a quarterback. We're just not. The last time we had a decent quarterback was 2016. That was 8 years ago. And we drafted that guy ourselves,
Right.
in the second round.
But what I'm saying is that great isn't even going to do us any good next year.
Yeah, but great will attract free agents. Great will elevate other people. Aiden O'Connell isn't bringing anybody through that door. Aiden O'Connell isn't making anybody better.
That's true. Now, I do want to note today, the San Francisco Giants signed Justin Verlander to a 1-year free agent deal, which makes my heart happy because nobody hates Justin Verlander more than Dodgers fans. So fuck you, Dodgers fans.
What really happened is that the Giants signed Kate Upton for 1 year, $15 million to come to Oracle Park.
Oh my God. I might have to cash in on my dad's season tickets this year.
You should go and see if you can say hi.
I know. All right, everybody, we are going to get to the Slayers of the week. Speaking of the Slayers of the week,
yes.
Now for Christmas, I was duped. My girlfriend said, make sure that you're available on Tuesday morning. I guess that was Christmas Eve, if I remember correctly, because we need to go pick up your Christmas present. And I was like, okay. And so Tuesday morning, I get up, I'm rightly hungover, and she drags me out of bed, gets me into the car. We go to the gas station. She says, do you want me to just tell you, or do you want to be surprised? I'm like, I want to be surprised. It's Christmas. So we start driving to the next town, and in the next town, there's a Costco. And I'm thinking, okay, what did she get me at Costco that is too heavy for her to lift? We get to the Costco, and she says, hit the freeway. And the freeway goes to Sacramento. And so I get on the freeway, and I'm like, okay, it's not at Costco. It's in Sacramento. What did she order that's in Sacramento? And we get to the exit that is to the airport. And she says, take this exit. And I was like, the airport? Did they just leave a package for her at like one of the airlines or something? Don't they just deliver anymore? And then when she said, take Terminal A, it hit me. She had flown my 2 boys up for Christmas. She can't lift them. They are 22 and 31 years old, and probably between them are pretty close to 500 plus pounds. She obviously can't lift them. So we pull up, my kids are standing on the sidewalk. It was a great reunion. Anyway, one of them is a musician. He plays drums. He does electronic music, whatever. He's a sound engineer by education. The other is just now kind of starting to get into music. The older one I raised on music, like progressively. This is punk. This is metal. This is like the stuff that you should be listening to, blah, 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 in stages. So I got him a gift card at the local record store. And so the day after Christmas, we go over to the record store. And working at the record store is this old friend of mine who I've known for 30 years now, who's a local radio DJ and also a Raiders fan. Huge Slayer fan. And one of the reasons why I like Slayer in the first place, which is littered in this show. His name is Paul Wilbur. Shout out to Paul Wilbur. What's up, Paul? The pirate of the high frequencies. So my kids are getting stuff. We're checking out. And Paul tells this story of this friend that he has that works for the Raiders. He's a ticket agent person. And he gets a call one day from one of the other ticket agents that says, I got this guy, Kerry King, on the phone. He says that somebody should know him. He's looking for a suite. Kerry King, of course, being the guitar player from Slayer. So this ticket agent is like, I got this, gets on the phone with them, picks up Kerry King at the airport, goes to the bar on the way to the game after setting him up with this like huge suite and everything. They go to the bar, they have drinks, they're like getting, nice conversation, whatever. They go to the game, beautiful suite. Kerry has a great time. He's got to go back to the airport. This ticket agent goes with him to another bar. They drink at the bar until he gets on the airplane. Next thing, Slayer is playing in Sacramento. Kerry King flies this dude up from Las Vegas to Sacramento. He has 3 friends, including my friend Paul. Takes them all. They get backstage. They're meeting Kerry King. They go out, have drinks with them. They're partying with guys. They're meeting everybody. And Paul gave him my number.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, I don't think anything will come from it, but if and all right. So it's time for the Slayers of the Week. And the Slayer guitar player in that photo is, of course, the late, great Jeff Hanneman. Rest in peace, buddy. Kerry is still with us. You didn't know this was coming, but we're going to each do a Slayer of the Week, and I'm going to take Brock Bowers. Okay. So Brock Bowers goes out and sets the rookie record for receptions, and then guess what? Malik Neighbors passes him. So what does Brock Bowers do? Goes out and he breaks the record again. So now Brock Bowers has the all-time tight end record for receptions. He's got the all-time tight end yards in a rookie season record, and he has the all-time record for receptions by any pass catcher at all. He was an absolute force to be reckoned with, the best 12th pick that the Raiders have ever had. Will be a stalwart at the tight end position in this offense for a long, long time. And for that, Brock Bowers, Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate, rookie Pro Bowler, owner of the most receptions by any player in their first season in the NFL, is my Slayer of the Week.
All right, that's a valid choice. I think when we look back on it from 10 years from now, barring anything super catastrophic, Brock Bowers will be probably one of the top 5 first-round picks by the Raiders that they've ever made in the history of the franchise. I think Brock Bowers is that good. We're going to look back on him the way we look back on the guys like Dave Casper and Antonio Gates and Tony Gonzalez. That's the class of player that he's in. And he showed that from his freshman year at the University of Georgia. We all knew he was going to be that good. Anybody who watched the SEC on Saturdays knew that this guy was special. And I'm glad he plays for our team and nobody else's team. So I will go on for my Slayer of the Week. And it's a guy who has taken a lot of flack in Raider Nation for the past few years. But a guy who has developed very quickly in this latter half of this season. And that's our man, Tyree Wilson. Tyree Wilson finally looks like an NFL player. He missed a lot of his first season, almost all of it, because of the foot injury that he suffered at Texas Tech. And then this year, he was thrust into a lot more action than he probably could have handled because of the catastrophic injury to Malcolm Kuntz. A thing which I think honestly derailed the Raider season before it started was the loss of Malcolm Kuntz. I don't think it can be understated how big a deal that was. And the Raiders have a decision to make with him. But that decision might be made a little bit easier with the emergence of Tyree Wilson as not only a legit threat against the run, but a legit pass rusher. And he's still honestly doing it with no technique. He's doing it just by, speed and size alone. If this guy learns a couple of actual factual pass rushing moves like Max Crosby has, he'll be, borderline unstoppable. He was absolutely physically, on a physical standpoint, worthy of being taken where he was in the first round a couple of years ago. And I think he will eventually grow into a really, really solid player. And I am just over the moon whenever I see him making plays like he did against the Chargers this week and against every team that we've played in the last month or so. He's been pretty darn good. And pretty good is a step up from the nothing that we saw in his rookie year. So I'm really happy with how he's developing. I'm looking forward to the future, and I think he's just doing great. He needs to keep it up.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, in week 17 against the Saints, he led the NFL in quarterback pressures that week. Speaking of edge guys, and he's not really a true edge guy, he's more of a 3T. What would you think about taking Abdul Carter if he's there at the 6?
I would not mind it at all. Abdul Carter, honestly, is my favorite player in this draft. I think he's the best pro prospect that's going to come out this year, just like I thought that about Brock Bowers last year. Abdul Carter is a monster. Everything that Max Crosby has developed into as a Raider, Abdul Carter already is. He's been that good. He's been that good for the last 3 years.
I don't think he'll be there at 6, but if he's there at 6, I will stray away from my intent to draft one of the 2 offensive linemen and smash Abdul Carter. Also, honorable mention for Slayer of the Week, Max Crosby. Although he missed the last month or so of the season, was also named to the Pro Bowl. And so shout out to him, getting at least some recognition, even though he didn't get to complete the season. So that's pretty good. All right, you guys, we're going to get into the Raiderdamus Hall of Shade real quick. And we'll see you on the other side. But I do want to say, we advertise Underdog. We have an affiliate agreement with Underdog. And you all should be playing Underdog. But Underdog is not the only DFS and best ball props betting app thing. I'm not going to call it the G word, but it's not the only app that I use to make money. I also use Fast Draft, which is a new app from Player Profiler. They have DFS games that'll be happening throughout the playoffs. Go to Fast Draft, FASTDRAFT.app, APP, or draftfaster.com. First time deposit of $25 gets a match of $25 if you use the code BOOTH, BOOTH. That's my last name. It's super fun. You will win money. There's a lot of pick'em games like the Super Slam. As you pick 6 guys, everybody can pick them, and then you just arrange them with the point boosters and see if you can outscore everybody else. So fastdraft.app, use the code BOOTH when you sign up, and that's cool. It'll be cool. It's fun. If you get into the draft, it's a 10-second clock. You're in and out in like less than 15 minutes. All right. It's time for the Raiderdamus Hall of Shame.
All right, and away we go. Just about a month ago, a man was gunned down in the street in New York City. This happens with some regularity, but this shooting was notable because the victim was the CEO of United Healthcare, a large insurance company. A wife lost her husband, and 2 children lost their father right before Christmas that day. And the country collectively looked at this and said, oh no! Well, anyway, if there's one type of person who gets no sympathy whatsoever for the American people, it's the head of a company that looks at patients with severe medical issues and gives them the thumbs down, like an emperor at the Colosseum ordering the death of the defeated gladiator. When we all heard the story of his murderer and his struggles with the health insurance industry and read his manifesto, we all said, yeah, that checks out. It's hard stuff to disagree with. Of course, the Unabomber had a similar manifesto, and very few disagreed with that either. But what everyone does disagree with is putting bombs in public mailboxes or shooting people in the streets. You can have a cogent argument, a legitimate gripe, and not kill people, because that's what you're railing against in the first place. And now you are not only a murderer, but a hypocrite as well. United Healthcare is just the most egregious example of an anti-consumer system designed wholesale to screw over the common man. The reason that most necessary evils exist is because the necessary part outweighs the evil part. But these days it seems that the evil part is winning. And that's why insurance is today's inductee into the Raiderdamus Hall of Shame. I want to preface all this by saying insurance companies are businesses, and they are not in the business of giving away money they do not actually owe. This is perfectly fair in my view, and insurance companies bank on the fact, that their customers will both cheap out on a policy and then not read what they buy. If you buy insurance, make sure you read it and very clearly understand what is and is not covered therein. Assume nothing. Understand that insurance companies are great at evaluating and mitigating risk, and you, as a normal person, are not. And the more claims you file, the more risky you are as a human being and as their customer. That being said, what an insurance company sells, essentially, is money. And they spend an exorbitant amount of money on lawyers to ensure that they don't have to pay any money to their actual customers. Their whole business model is to sell a subscription to money and then hopefully never pay it out. This is what we call here in the real world a conflict of interest. State Farm's motto is, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. And sure, they're like your neighbor, and when you're at work, they'll come over, fuck your wife, and drink all the beer in your fridge and then clog your toilet. There is one and only one product that we as Americans are forced, compelled, and mandated to buy by the U.S. government, and that is car insurance. Walking is a right and driving is a privilege. But in order to exercise that privilege in a nation as large as Europe and with next to no public transportation, you must purchase insurance. This insurance is not for you. No. This insurance is for the mechanic who repairs your car. This insurance is for the person you run into with your car. This insurance is for the ambulance company that charges $5,000 to get you 2 miles up the road to a local hospital run by a charity. And if the insurance company could pay the deer that stood dumbfounded in the middle of the road while you plowed headlong into it, they would. Many Americans have life insurance, which is a bet between you and the insurance company. The company is betting that you are functionally immortal, while you are betting that you will die tomorrow. You will win this bet eventually, but you will then be dead, and the insurance company will be given by your grieving family to the local funeral home so they can dig a hole and throw you in it while you look your best in your favorite Pink Floyd t-shirt. Hanging on in quiet desperation is the English way. And finally, there's medical insurance. The first time that most people need medical care is when they are born, because yelling at an exhausted woman to push and handing a pair of scissors to a bewildered new father is not free. We spend our lives getting sick, getting hurt, dealing with inner demons and with outer ones too. Medical costs used to be rather small when doctors made house calls, and we gave him a few shillings after he assured us that we did not have tuberculosis, and he went on his way. Now we must pay exorbitant fees to doctors and hospitals, and why? Mostly because all doctors and hospitals carry malpractice insurance to protect them against lawsuits. Yes, that's right. Doctors can pay money to indemnify them against causing you harm. If I could buy insurance that would indemnify me from the repercussions of punching chief stands in their ugly sister-kissing faces, I'd be the first person to the door of my local Allstate branch tomorrow morning. Unfortunately, no such insurance exists for the common folk, and the one insurance doctors do have is so ridiculously expensive that they then have to jack up the prices on the patients they don't maim to cover for the ones that they do. Well, Raiderdamus, you might say, why don't we have some kind of tort reform to reduce the cost of this? And I, Raiderdamus, will tell you. The first reason is you cannot put a price on human life, the way you can look up a Kelley Blue Book value of your car. Look around your home right now, at your spouse or your children, or even at yourself. How much are they worth to you? How much would you pay to keep them safe or avenge them if, God forbid, something goes wrong? The second reason is very simple, and it's that the only people who really win in a system like this are the lawyers. It's the lawyers who profit, the lawyers who make the laws, and the lawyers who decide whom those laws apply to. The heartless, soulless AI that decides which United Healthcare patients get care and which ones don't does not profit. But the heartless, soulless lawyer which defends United Healthcare from being sued into oblivion for using that AI does profit. And now you are dead because having a functioning pancreas is not deemed medically necessary. But look on the bright side. You don't have to pay insurance anymore. And that's all I got to say about that.
Oh, my opinion on insurance could fill a book.
Most people, I think,
Drove me out of my previous career, and thankfully I am here. All right, everybody, that's going to do it for us for the week. We will be back next week, hopefully with a coaching hire or something.
would be nice.
Little news on our AFC West foes, all three of whom made the fucking playoffs, you bitches. And we'll get to revel in the Broncos early exit and the Chiefs early exit and the Chargers moving on. And yeah, follow me at BigBonedFFB on Twitter. And how about you, Raiderdamus?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at Raiderdamus. And I want to say, Biggs, I also am glad that you're here.
Yay. Thanks.
Yeah.
I'm blushing. All right. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week. And as every week, fuck the Broncos.
Fuck the Chiefs.